All right, welcome to another expert interview. I say the same thing on everyone. I'm always excited for our guests. Today's guest is no exclusion. I'm really excited to have Elwin here because we get to talk about health and wellness. And I know a lot of the people I talk to are really focused on increasing energy, losing weight, longevity. Those are all hot topics right now. And I know we're going to be able to get in the weeds. So, Elwin, thank you for your time, man. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into it.
Hey, Elwin Robinson. I do a few different things, but I guess my number one mission in life is to be part of the movement to end chronic disease by addressing root causes. And related to that, I'll do all kinds of things. I have a genetic testing and reporting company that helps people understand what genetic factors, for instance, they need to address in order to be their healthiest, best selves. I formulate products, partly for my own brands. I also do it for other people, mainly dietary supplement products, although there's been other stuff as well. I provide online education. I have a podcast, a YouTube channel, stuff like that. I frequently do other people's health podcasts as well, sometimes business podcasts talking about how to function more optimally. And I got into it in the first place because I have my own health issues, I guess, like a lot of people. And I guess maybe also because it runs in the family. Both my parents were teachers. My dad was a science teacher and microbiologist. And so, like, that scientific bent, I guess, has always been part of my DNA, as it were. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming. Talk to me about, I want to go to the genetic testings. It's so unique. I know we were digging in the weeds on it. Talk to me about that company. What is it doing and why is it so crazy what you're doing?
Yeah, it provides an incredible amount of helpful and accurate information about people. And so I first came across this possibility when I was struggling with my own health issue a few years ago. And like many people who have a health issue, I spent a lot of money, at least tens of thousands of dollars, maybe hundreds of thousands, seeking all kinds of alternative things when my normal medical doctor wasn't able to help. And basically, nothing worked. Nothing. I saw all kinds of practitioners, mainstream medical practitioners, alternative, like functional medicine, nutritionists, that kind of thing. It was a pain issue specifically. Then I was like, okay, maybe it's not a health thing, maybe it's a structural thing. So I saw chiropractors, osteopaths, physical therapists, all those kind of people. They didn't help. And eventually I was like, maybe it's all in my mind, maybe I'm going crazy. So I saw like a therapist and all kinds of people to address emotional issues, and that didn't help. Although, and all of it was good, and I learned good stuff and all the rest of it, but it didn't really help with this pain issue. And it was a very specific type of pain issue where painkillers didn't work. In fact, they would make it worse. It's one of those things they say a healthy person has 100 wishes, but a sick person only one, right? Like when you're just in constant pain or when you're really sick, like all you want is just to be. In fact, I remember this is someone asked me the question once, if you could have $100 million, but for the rest of your life, every day you'll wake up sick, like you got like a bad cold, and nothing will work to treat it. So you'll have all that money, but you'll just be ill, right? And that's only a cold. That's not even something more serious. And I think you shook your head. Yeah, most people would say, no way. It sucks to be sick. And if you knew you were going to have to feel that way every day for the rest of your life. Now, maybe if you're very philanthropic, you'd be like, I'm willing to take the bullet to help other people with the money. And that's noble. But yeah, most people really, they wouldn't do it. And so, yes, health is super important. I didn't have it. Anyway, so I tried a million things. I was in a fortunate position to have time and money, being a business owner for quite a while by then. And so I tried a lot of stuff, and I tried this genetic testing thing. It's actually not testing that's important, it's more the reporting. Like I actually used data that I got from 23andMe back in like 2014. Because once they sequence your genome, any of these ancestry companies, that's it. It doesn't change over time. So I uploaded that data to the system and got these reports back. And I was blown away, Devin. I was like, it felt like going to a psychic tarot card reader or something. I've never had that experience, but like in movies where they're like, I know exactly everything about you. Like, how the hell is that possible? It felt like that, like they knew everything about me. And I'm like, I was blown away because I'm always, and you might be like this, Devin, a lot of people watching might be like this, like, I think as entrepreneurs, certainly we like to believe that we create our own destiny. We don't like to think of ourselves as being very shaped by the past. We're like, no, I'm shaped by my future, which I create, that kind of thing. So I was that kind of guy. So the idea that I had all these issues that were caused by my genetics really gave me pause. But I realized if, first of all, these issues I was dealing with, and there were several, they were all predicted and explained, like the actual causes of them in the genetic reports. And so I was like, huh, this is incredible. Tried it on my wife. business partners, some employees, some friends, some family. And after I'd seen like a couple of dozen people's reports and gone through it with them, I was like, this is extremely accurate. The only problem was it was very complicated. It was more geared for practitioners. It was pretty expensive as well. So I was like, I would like to have something as accurate and helpful as this, but make it simpler and also affordable for pretty much anyone. So that was the birth of the company, Genetic Insights. And that's basically what we do. I would say if you've tried another thing like it, it's not the same as most of them. I'm not saying we're the best out there, I'll be honest. Like we're the most affordable and easy to use out of the good ones. But the good ones are like less than 10%, maybe 5%. The vast majority of them, all they're doing is they're doing basically what, a computer programmer you could pay on Fiverr a couple $100 to do. They basically just get the file and they like read a few lines and they say, this line means this. And often it's this line means you need to buy this supplement. And I won't disparage anyone I just don't like disparaging people in general, but certainly not on a public platform. But very big genetic companies that you may have heard of, that's all they're doing. It's incredibly simplistic. With our system, we're evaluating over 200 million SNPs, which are these variations in DNA. And maybe there's a few of our reports where we just evaluate one, say, okay, because of this, you have this, maybe you have an increased need for this nutrient, or you have an increased risk of this, or you have an increased issue processing this toxin, or that kind of thing. You have an increased risk for an allergy for this, anything like that. But with some of the reports, like a heart health report, we're evaluating over a million SNPs. And that's because it's not always simple. There may be a bunch of factors that you have that predispose you to a heart condition, but there may be a bunch of factors that you have that predispose you not to have a heart condition. So those all have to be understood and weighed against each other. And so the engine behind what we do has several dozen full-time AI engineers, several dozen full-time research scientists. That's not, my company doesn't employ all of those. Like that company, there's several providers, as I said, like I'm not the only one who use that high quality information. It's just that out of those people who provide that, we are the simplest and the most affordable. That's what I focus on. And then, yeah, I work with people. I quite often go through their genetic results with them. And then there's a handful of people, like half a dozen currently, that I work with on a regular basis. Most of them are business owners, high-level executives, generally more business owners, though, to be honest, there's only one executive. And we start with their genetic information. We do blood tests and stuff like that. And usually I partner with a medical doctor. She's both a normal medical doctor and a functional medicine doctor. And then we partner together and we work with people to optimize their health in various ways. But it all starts with the genetics because there's so much information you can get that you can easily spend thousands or tens of thousands of dollars on tests, especially if someone has a very nebulous problem. I'm just low in energy, or I just can't seem to lose the last 10 to 20 pounds or something like that. There's so many reasons. There's so many things that could be. And I know with the weight loss, a lot of people like to disparage that and say, oh, you're just eating too much or whatever. But I find that not to be true. Usually, if someone can't lose weight and they have tried, which is almost everyone who wants to lose weight, they've tried many times. And it's usually some hormonal imbalance that's at the root of it. And there often is a genetic component to that. And so it's not to say your genes make you overweight. That's not true. There's obviously lifestyle factors as well. But it is true, and this is the thing I want to say, it is far harder for some people to do some things than others because of genetics. For some people, it's really easy to go 5 hours a night sleep and feel okay. For some people, that's really difficult and they need at least 8. For some people, it's really easy to stay thin or optimal body weight. For some people, it's really difficult. For some people, it's really easy to eat whatever food they want. For some people, they just are predisposed to these allergies and intolerances and all the rest of it. So for some people, it's very easy to maintain a positive attitude. Some people have a heavy genetic tendency to neuroticism, anxiety, all these other kind of things, and depression, and they really need to work at feeling good or having a positive attitude. So knowing this about yourself, I think, really helps to have compassion for yourself, have compassion for others. That's why I recommend ideally not just you who should do the test, but actually everyone in your life. Like husbands and wives is great. I've done a few siblings as well, sometimes parent and child. And it's because it's so easy to be into why can't you just with someone else, and to realize actually there's a very good reason why it's way harder for them than you. And there's probably a very good reason why some things are way harder for you than them, even though you may not want to think of that as much. And often genetics are a big part of it.
So There's so much there. So let's break down pieces of it. So you mentioned bringing current data in. So if I have a 23andMe detailed comprehensive report, I can use that to start the process. If I don't have that, do you also offer that? So talk me through the two paths I could take.
Yeah, not 23andMe report, but 23andMe raw data. And Ancestry.com, MyHeritage, any of these ancestry companies, it's either within there when you log in, you can find it, or sometimes you have to contact the customer service. But the keywords you're looking for is raw data. It's this big file. If you scroll, it'll take you all day to go through it. It's just this massive block of information that's completely impossible to understand unless you are a genetic expert, as opposed to a report where they're telling you something. So yeah, you can get that raw data from any of those companies if you've done it before. But yeah, if you haven't done it before, we absolutely offer that as well. So when people go to our site, geneticinsights.co, it's e-commerce style, basically right at the top is, do you have a DNA kit? Yes. Sorry, do you need a DNA kit? Yes, no. So if you need a DNA kit, we do that. If you don't need it, great. I'm not trying to get as much money out of people as possible. I always encourage them, if you already have had it, pick the option without the DNA kit because you can get your results much quicker. You can get your results within a day. It takes a little while for the AI to process everything because it is, as I said, millions and millions of different data points that it's interpreting. But whereas if you have to order a DNA kit, it takes 4 to 6 weeks on average. So there's a bit more of a wait there. If you have ever done it before, it's worth digging in and contacting the customer service and getting the raw data, then you can get your results straight away. That's one of the things that I loved about it, Devin, because I was sick of, often I would do testing with these practitioners and I have to wait for weeks to get results. And I love the fact I could get all this information straight away. That was really awesome to me, or maybe not straight away, within less than a day.
Talk to me about the follow-up. So you mentioned for yourself what you're able to do, but when you get the data, is there consultation? Do they take it back to their primary care doctor? Do they go, what do we do with the data once we have it? Are we supplementing? Is it changing workout? There's so many subjects that you hit.
Yeah, it's a great question. The main thing that reports consist of, other than the first bit, which is just an introduction in case it's your first report that you're reading or in case you're sharing it with someone else, the main content is number one, a risk score. So sometimes it's binary, like you either do and don't have a high risk, but often it's actually there's a percentage in there. And so client the other day, for instance, wanted to lose weight, didn't understand why it wasn't happening, wasn't eating a lot by their estimation, but they were eating often. And then when I looked and I was like, huh, sounds like blood sugar to me. I looked at the genetic reports. Hypoglycemia is right at the top of the list of, there's like over 500 reports in there, but they're stacked by default, they're stacked by order of priority of which you have the highest risk of. So it's right at the top. I clicked it, opened it, 99th percentile. So it's okay. So does that mean he definitely has it? It depends what it is. There are some diseases that only 0.1% of the population has. So even if your report says 99th percentile, you still probably don't have it because it's rare. Something like hypoglycemia, hypothyroidism, even the tendency to be overweight, we have a report on that, allergies, whatever, they're pretty common. So if you have a 99th percentile, what that basically usually means is by the time you hit like 40, unless you're really healthy, you probably have that issue, or at least you have had it if it's like an intermittent issue, like an infection or something. And sure enough, yeah, that's what it was, confirmed by looking at testing data. And so, yeah, that percentile figure is also really useful. But to answer your question, the main bulk of the report, that's the first section, is actually recommendations. And they come in three categories: lifestyle, diet, and supplement. We don't give medication recommendations, obviously. They're ordered based on which has the most evidence and which has the most impact based on the evidence. So things that have a 5 out of 5 score for those will be at the top. Things that are more spurious but there's still some research, we'll put it near the bottom of the list of recommendations. What do you do with it? So you can go through it yourself. Let's say all you care about is X, right? All you care about is your anxiety. All you care about is the fact that you can't seem to lose weight. All you care about is your energy, whatever. You can just open that report and maybe a few that are related to it, read it, go, oh, look at that. I've got a high risk of it. That makes sense. And then look at the recommendations and do them. It can be as simple as that. You can also share it with your doctor or other practitioners. We do have that. We have a few doctors. I mentioned one that I work with, but there are others. I have a doctor, for instance, in Arkansas who basically gets all his patients to use our reports, and then he uses that as a starting place, which is really smart. But the way the reports are written is almost every sentence in the report has several citations. So it's very mainstream. meaning that you can just share it with your doctor. Now, will your doctor listen? In my experience, a lot of doctors won't even listen to another doctor, right? If you go to a doctor and say, this other doctor told me this, they're like, they don't want to hear it. So obviously it depends on the doctor. But if the doctor is reasonably open-minded, but they don't want to hear pseudoscience fluff, they only want to hear things that have real scientific evidence and data behind them, then they will be open to our reports. That's our experience. If they are dismissive of everything, then obviously they won't be open to what we have to say either. So you can bring it to a practitioner. And then lastly, yeah, if you would like me to walk through your results with you, not that it's necessary, but just because I have the experience, I've gone through a lot of them now. People can also book a consult with me and we go through them. I don't sell on that consult. The vast majority of people, I just give them advice and send them on their way. But as I said, there's a small handful of people who are like really committed and intent on optimizing. And usually they ask me if we can work together more regularly, and then we do that. But yeah, usually I recommend people go to practitioners. It's, oh, you've got maybe a tendency for a lot of different nutritional deficiencies, go to a nutritionist. Or, oh, you have a tendency for a hormone imbalance, go to a doctor who specializes in hormone optimization. Or you have a risk of whatever. So I tend to send people to practitioners as opposed to working them myself. But again, it helps to narrow it down. Again, if you have something that's quite diffuse, that because medical doctors often hate generalized symptoms, right? If you go in there and say, oh, I'm feeling cold all the time, I've got low energy, I can't seem to lose weight, my skin feels dry, I've got constipation, my allergies are playing up, they're going to be like, ugh, because to them, that's just a bunch of disconnected things. They don't want to hear it. But those, what I just listed there, they're all symptoms of low thyroid function. Now, I had a friend who's a business partner who, I don't know if I introduced him to you yet, Devin, who works at ClickBank. I can say his name publicly, Kyle, because he had me on this podcast to talk about this issue, so it's okay to say it. But basically, he was really struggling with energy. He would say it took him like an hour to get out of bed in the morning, and he was thinking he was depressed, maybe low testosterone. I was like, it could be, but to me, it sounds like low thyroid. And I said, you really need to go to a doctor. And he's okay, I will. And then a few weeks later, he's complaining about it again. And I said, did you go to a doctor? He goes, no. He's working like 60 hours a week. He's got 4 kids. I just don't have time. I said, okay. And then I said, and he wants to be involved in this genetic business that we're talking about. And I said, okay, if you want to be involved in business, you've got to try it. You got to actually do it. And I said, it's really simple. All you got to do is send off your saliva. You don't have to go anywhere. He said, all right. And he did it. Got his results back. I looked at it. I looked at the energy category. I tend to sort by categories because that's his thing. And right at the top of the list, hypothyroidism. Open the report, 99th percentile risk. It's like, okay. And I showed him that and I said, look, you're a really high risk for this. You have the symptoms for it. You need to go to a doctor. And he did. And it turned out he had not only hypothyroidism, but Hashimoto's, which is where your immune system is slowly destroying your thyroid gland. And it's really important to get on top of it. The sooner, the better. And I said, this is the kind of doctor I'd go to. These are the kind of things that I'd be hoping that they would actually do for you. Low dose naltrexone to address the autoimmune, probably some kind of T4, T3 combination therapy, not just T4 for the hypothyroidism itself. So I gave him a little bit of guidance. He went and found a practitioner who fit the bill and he got better. It's sure enough. But I guess I say that to say it's like a really low investment, not just of money, but also time and energy to get those results. It's like back then it was spitting into a tube, which took us a few minutes. Now it's a cheek swab, so it's even less time. But it can give that information, which tells you what to prioritize, right? Because it's, oh, I can't get out of bed. Do I need to go and see a therapist? Do I need to go see a doctor? Do I need to see a motivational speaker? It's hard to know exactly what it is, and it helps to narrow that down.
Let's switch gears to the formulate product side. I know you just dropped a bunch of different ideas and recommendations and supplements that I know working with you on another project, which is coming soon, and I've teased it on a few of these. How the heck did you get into that world? Give us a little backstory and like how did you get into formulating products and supplements, and then let's geek out a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Like I said, it's in my blood. My father he was a science teacher at one point, but at another point he was selling organic foods back in the early 1980s when almost no one was doing that, certainly in England. And he was organic farming as well. And then he was teaching people how to farm, all this stuff. And then my mother was very ill. She had cancer 4 times during my lifetime. And she would buy a lot of supplements and she was pretty convinced they helped her get better, although she also did conventional medical things. But she survived things that you're not supposed to survive by normal standards. Who knows? And so I was always aware of it. And so I was taking vitamins and stuff even as a teenager, which is unusual, while also smoking and doing drugs and all those kind of teenage things. I would take vitamins and supplements and stuff anyway. Then I dropped it when I left home and when they weren't like lying around the kitchen anyway. Although I did do nutrition at school for a qualification, GCSE it's called over in England. And then in my late 20s, I started to really struggle with energy. And my mother had cancer numerous times. My father had ME, which is, I think, CFS. There's different words for it, I think, in the US. But anyway, it's like really low energy situation that probably goes down to mitochondrial health ultimately. And so I started to get symptoms of that in my late 20s. I was like, oh, God. And so I decided to change course. I was just drifting at the time. I was working as a chef, so nutrition vaguely related, but not really. And I decided to study it. And eventually I decided to launch my own business. And it was very organic. It was to begin with, it's because I was doing so much better. People kept asking me for advice while I was a chef. They would keep coming in the kitchen and interrupting me. And I'd be like, okay, I've got to get back to. And I think eventually I said to someone, look, do you want to just pay like an hour for me to sit down and answer all these questions for you? And I think this was a guy who wanted to like put on muscle or something. It was very mainstream. And I was like, he was like, yeah, fantastic. So I was okay. So we did that. And then he recommended me to a bunch of other people. And then he encouraged me to create a supplement, like based on the one that I'd recommended to him that had worked so well for him. And then I would see people and consult with them. And they kept asking me where to get things. And I was like, oh, I may as well have my own. So it was completely unthought through, to be honest, to begin with. But that was 2008. That story where I just shared of where I started to work with people. And by 2010, I had my own like online store selling a handful of things. And yeah, over the years, Devin, as I said, I've been in a fortunate position even before this health issue. Between 2010 and 2019, I was basically feeling great, way better. I was touring the world. I did talks in all kinds of different places. I would do retreats as a speaker. I had a book. I had a bunch of different video courses. I did all that kind of stuff. And that's why it was so weird when I then developed this pain condition that I didn't know what it was. Was it health thing? Was it this? Was it that? But anyway, so during all that time, I was working with people and yeah, developing products and getting a lot of feedback because I was not sitting in my ivory tower. I was working with people. I would do these group calls, I guess a little bit like this, where people would come and they would share their feedback on the course. They would say, this didn't work, that didn't work. And so I kept getting the feedback of what did work and what didn't work. So I'd continually refine it. And when you do work with a lot of people, you quickly get the feedback about, because it's great to look at the research and the science, but it's also like clinical experience. I never undervalue that. And I like on my own podcast, I like to have people on who qualifications or not, the main thing to me is have they worked with a lot of people? Have they got that feedback about what actually works as opposed to what should work in theory? And are they open-minded enough to recognize the difference? Because a lot of practitioners, unfortunately, not just medical ones, but alternative ones as well, they have a fixed idea of how to help people, whether it's go keto or go vegan or take this supplement range or whatever it might be. And then when it doesn't work and the person comes back to them and goes, hey, I tried your advice and it didn't really work for me, they're like, you must have been doing it wrong, which I hate. But it's so common. Yeah, it's not only medical doctors who do that. I find that actually more common in the alternative health space, like disgracefully. So actually getting that feedback and listening to people and all the rest of it. And then obviously researching, trying a bunch of stuff, cupboards full, thousands of different supplements that I've tried, other people have tried. I'd say it's a passion. It's something, when I was doing well, it was always about optimization. When I started struggling, it was about healing. And I first met Elliot, who I think is going to be a future guest on, because he approached me back in 2015 and he said, I have this audience, I have this group of men that I was writing a bunch of different ebooks and stuff like that. And can you help them with this issue? And I said, yeah, but it won't be easy. I said, most of the products out there that are just like 2 capsules of these bad quality herbs do absolutely nothing. I said, if you want a product that will actually work, it has to be really high quality extract. I described what type. And I said, you're going to have to give them like a 30-gram dose, which means it would be like, what was it, 60 capsules a day, which no one's ever going to do. So we're going to have to sell a powder. So that's what we ended up doing. And then we shifted it to a different form where it was only 5 grams a day, but still that's 10 capsules. So like focusing on what actually works is always the number one priority for me. And so for that reason, even though the supplements are fairly expensive because they needed to be to swallow that increased production cost compared to most supplements, for that business, we have many people who spent over $10,000 with us since we launched that supplement range, just on that range of supplements, not all the other stuff I talked about, not the courses and the reviews and all that, just on supplements. Our number one customer is a medical doctor from California who spent like over $20,000 on our supplements within the last 10 years. So I don't think that happens. I know there's a lot of people, supplement companies who make a lot of money, but it's a lot of churn. People come and then they go when they realize it doesn't work. People don't keep coming back to you year after year unless, it actually works. And so and when I do formulations for other people, whether it's creating a business together, like you were talking about, Devin, or whether it's just they pay me to do it, that's always my primary focus, is making something that actually works so that it increases the lifetime value, increases referrals, it reduces refunds. Like, I just think that's a real business, like being focused on products. And I loved when I read Elon Musk's biography a couple of years ago. I know he's a bit off the deep end these days, but whether you support what he's doing or not, it's a bit more controversial. But back then it was just, he was the business guy, he's the Tesla guy, right? And his number one focus is always like product. I think there's quite a lot, like increasing the quality of the product, also increasing like the quality of the product versus the cost, trying to make it as efficient as possible and all the rest of it. Whether you look at SpaceX, at making the rocket simpler and making them reusable and all that kind of thing, like having the maximum value for the minimum cost. And when I read that, I really related to it because that's always been my focus as well. Like, I learned from a lot of business people who are like, marketing is all that matters. The quality of the product doesn't really matter. Like, you hear this a lot from business gurus and marketing gurus, but I say if the richest man in the world has got there by focusing almost entirely on product quality, and the second richest guy in the world, sometimes anyway, Bezos, has got there entirely by focusing on customer, because again, Bezos' biography, customer, that's all he cared about. If they can become the richest people in the world by focusing only on product quality or only on making the customer happy, then I think then I can do the same thing and do okay.
So I don't even know which question to ask because I have so many on the supplement side of
Sorry, I
things.
probably said too much there. Yeah.
No, it's great. It's so good because I think just reflecting back, having gone through cleanses and seeing alternative people for different things over the years for myself, what I do find is your statement on they have a way is very normal, right? This is how we do the detox. This is how we move people through. This is our approach. And then you go through the approach and maybe it works a little bit, but it doesn't work to what your expectations were. And then their pushback is, are you following it? And I am. And so I think this is where the two conversations collide, where it's like the genetics make a ton of sense because you can get more insight into, ooh, is there something else at play that I'm not aware of? And then your approach to supplementing is so interesting because it's more, let's identify the problem, let's explore what solutions exist, and then let's test.
Yep. Yeah. And with the supplements, of course, you have to make something generic, but I love the part that you focused in on there because that is really my true passion, is to make the approach more and more personalized. That's what the genetics are really about. And I encourage people to do follow-up testing as well with blood tests, urine tests, whatever else is necessary. Like, I don't think there's any one size fits all health advice. Like, for example, I don't think there is a single item of food that is good universally for everyone. There's always an exception. There's always someone who it's not good for, no matter what it is. I don't think there's any type of exercise that's universally good for everyone. You could say maybe walking, but even that one, it's okay. But walking outside, maybe not if they're like allergic to the pollen in the air. Walking inside, maybe not. If they have a moldy house, it's actually going to make them worse. There's always these exceptions. Sunlight is generally good for people, but not always. Fresh air is generally good for people, but not always. It's like even the most generic, basic stuff, like there's always exceptions to it, let alone all the stuff that's more controversial. Should you eat carbs or more fat for fuel or more protein or whatever, where it really is more case by case. That's one of our favorite reports in Genetic Insights, by the way, is like, how do you handle carbohydrates? Some people handle them really well, even if they're simple carbohydrates, and they're totally fine. And some people don't handle them well at all. And that depends if you have what we call a farmer or if you have a hunter-gatherer gene. And depending on that, like, your ability to handle carbohydrate completely changes. So just one example, but that's true for almost everything. And so to work out exactly what people need is really helpful. And I guess what I'm trying to do now is do that, but systematize it a little bit so it can be more mass market. And that's my latest project, is Metics, the weight optimization system. And this is basically identified that there's 5 key hormonal imbalances that people usually have when they need to lose weight. And so some people have one, some people have all of them. And we're creating a way of evaluating that, which is highly effective. So it's still in the R&D stage right now. And then we created a range of products around it, which at the time of recording this, are about to launch in like a week. And each of the 5 products is going to be participating in a clinical trial to prove its effectiveness, which I'm very excited about as well. And so again, it's a generic supplement still because it's only one supplement per hormonal imbalance, but at least we're identifying first, do you have this hormonal imbalance? And then we're giving you the ingredients that are most likely to help. Whereas any other supplement that's claiming to help you lose weight, it's just going to be like, hey, this will help you lose weight because of these ingredients show that they help to lose weight. Do you know what I mean? Not understanding the mechanism behind it. So I think personalized medicine, I guess, is one of the words for it. And I really think it's the future and not just in the alternative world. Like even in terms of the fact that you go to a doctor and whether you're a 100-pound woman or a 300-pound man, they say take 2 of these in the morning. That makes no sense, right? Some people will need way more and some people will need way less, and even of, something very generic. And so all of that should be being thought about, and it's just not because of laziness and rigidity and whatever other factors. But if you actually care about optimizing yourself, taking generic advice, I would say, in this day and age is foolish. It's not about going out and working out which guru is right or which doctor is right or whatever. It's about working out what's right for you.
Let's highlight some of the supplements and companies you have, and we'll make sure to link them just so if people are listening and they're like, hey, I want to lean in because obviously the way you're putting supplements together is different. It's thought through differently. The quality is different. So what are the different brands that they could go to and what supplement groups are available there?
Yeah, great question. Because I've been the guy behind the scenes, a lot of them don't have my name on, but I'll give you the few that do. So feelyounger.net, that's also where we're launching initially the Hormetics weight loss range that I just described with where we'll run the clinical trials. Ultimately, it'll have its own domain. But yeah, so feelyounger.net, that has a bunch. Also, the New Alpha, that's a very male site. So I would recommend don't go there. If you're not male, don't identify as male because you probably won't like it. But if you do, you probably will. So that's a good one as well. And then, yeah, God, most of the rest are behind the scenes ones that I probably shouldn't take credit for somewhere publicly.
Perfect. Let's go a step further and we can tease what we've been working on because I think there's a part of this that one other people could tap into. But when we got on the first call, and so let's connect some dots, right? A couple of ACES members, Brad's also involved. Brad's been on a lot of these calls as well. Made a couple of connections. We ended up with a golf supplement. It's brilliant. And I remember getting on with Elwin, and there was this idea of a supplement, and then you just geeked out. Like you just pulled up like the coolest supplement spread for time of day, amount to put together, how it works. And this is all attached to your and Elliot's company, Monetize My Brand. So
Yes.
let's talk about Monetize My Brand, and then let's talk about what you do in that company.
Yeah, that's perfectly takes off from where I ended there because it's why can't he share that he's because I do formulate products for other people that they then will have as their own product range. And that is the company Monetize My Brand that you just mentioned there. MonetizeMyBrand.com. It's like a one-page site that just gives an overview of what we do. So yeah, this is for someone, if you have an established audience, and generally that's either going to be influencers, thought leaders, experts, whatever you might want to call it, people with a substantial following, usually on social media, maybe your email list. Or also the other category of people we often work with is practitioners. If you are you a doctor, are you a dentist, are you a chiropractor, these kind of people, and you would like your own range of supplement. And so not white label, not like something off the shelf that you just slap your name on, but actually something that works. And I say I formulate it for people. Sometimes I do it for people, but sometimes I help them. So they'll send me something that is, I don't know, completely unrealistic in various different ways, and then I'll help them get to a point where they're still happy with it, but it's something that is actually marketable. Just for instance, practicalities, like they want it to be capsules, but then when we actually look at it, like the formula is like 20 capsules per day. I'm like, do you think your customers are going to be willing to take 20 capsules a day? And I'm like, yeah, probably not. Okay, so how can we get this down? That kind of thing. So I either do it for them or I work with people. And but yeah, that's only the tip of the iceberg of what we do in terms of formulating the product. We also take care of the manufacturing, the fulfillment, the customer service, all these, if people want us to, if they want to do any of these elements themselves, they can. And very importantly, we do the selling of it, setting up e-commerce or shopping cart or sales funnels, the marketing, the design. So basically everything if people want, which usually they do. If you're like, you know what, I have a good audience. I'm sick of recommending other people's supplements. I'd like my own range, but I do not have time to do it all, or B, and I think this is something that we find more, I'm a bit intimidated by the whole experience. And you're right to be a bit intimidated, I'd say. Like, it is a bit of a minefield. It took us, like, I would say, almost 10 years to develop the kind of relationship with a manufacturer that where we're actually happy with them, where the quality is great, the reliability is great, all the rest of it. When you just go out there and you just like, let me just speak to manufacturers and see who can make this. Oh my God. Yeah, I spent years really struggling with a lot of companies. Some mistakes I made, but just there's a lot of not great ones out there, I would say. And I suppose there's a lot of they'll take advantage of you if you're not very knowledgeable kind of thing. Yeah. So someone who I guess who's very experienced in it and who can say, you know what, we'll do it for you and you can have the amount of input that you want. So usually they want input on messaging, right? They don't want us saying anything that they don't, but generally they just want to review it as opposed to writing it all themselves, for instance. Generally, they want to put an input on the product. They want to make sure they're happy with it, of course, which is great. And otherwise, often they largely leave it to us. And yeah, another thing is often if it's a big established company, they're worried about the liability that comes with having supplements, which is not as much of an issue that people think. You can just get liability insurance for supplements. Again, it's something that we're happy to do to take care of for people. And so long as you are acting in an ethical way, both in terms of your business practices and your product quality, as we're just talking about, nothing's ever foolproof. But 15 years of doing it now and never had a problem, having sold tens of millions of dollars worth of supplements because we do those good business practices and because we have a good quality product. So yeah, we basically take care of it. And so yeah, going back to the company thing. So yeah, we'll happily set up if you prefer, a separate company. So it's all going through a different company. It's still your brand or it's still connected to your brand. It's something that you can claim ownership of. I'm not going to go on a public thing and say it's that I really formulated products, as you've just seen. That will be it'll be 100% your brand and your product range and all the rest of it, but we'll take care of everything for you.
That's awesome. And yeah, stay tuned. We will be doing a big announcement inside Aces here in the next few weeks for a supplement that we've collaborated on. And then the follow-up interview with Elliot, we will dig much deeper into that, case studies, revenue, the metrics, the process, how to build it, who's the fit for. We'll get in the weeds more. Coming back to today, let's put a little bow on this. So we've talked about genetics, which is great because that gives us clarity to maybe what we should be focusing on in different segments. We've talked about formulating supplements and personalized medicine. That's fascinating. What haven't we talked about that is value you can provide, is a place people can engage with you? What else do you want to talk about?
I think we're at time here, so I'll keep it short. But I guess the other thing that I just want to let people know is that there is a solution to chronic disease. This is the other thing, and this is really what my podcast goes into in depth. It's on Spotify. If you search my name, it will come up, I'm sure, but it's the Rejuvenate podcast. It's also on YouTube. And I came up with this thing called the Rejuvenate Blueprint. And this is basically like all chronic health conditions are down to 7 different root causes. And I say this to say, because maybe most people listening to this probably don't have a chronic health condition, because often, to be honest, if you're successful in business, you don't. That's one of the reasons you are successful in business. I'd say, to me, the main predictors of success in business are probably intelligence and health. And you may say, what about energy? What about motivation? What about attitude? But I think a lot of those things come from health. If your mitochondrial energy production is good and your hormones and neurotransmitters are recently balanced, you'll have a good attitude. So then all you really need is intelligence and you have the energy to see things through and work hard and you'll be successful. To me, it's really as simple as that. But anyway, you may well know someone with chronic conditions. I think that's very common. Or you may be generally good, but there may be something that you want to improve. And so there's 7 root causes, and I'll just say them very quickly to say, if you have already tried a lot of stuff and it hasn't worked, it's probably because you haven't looked at least one of these. So there's genetic causes. We just talked about that already. People don't realize how big a difference it can sometimes make. There's nutritional deficiencies. That's really big. And suboptimal levels, I think, may be a better way of putting it. Deficiency often in a medical system means it's so severe that there's a established identifiable disease. But what I'm talking about is a lot of the time people have suboptimal levels of various nutrients. It means that various processes in their body don't run as well as they should. And that then is a significant contributing factor to all kinds of health conditions. One that many people may have heard of is magnesium and cardiovascular health, for instance. When you're low magnesium, it leads to hypertension, it leads to lower heart rate variability and all that kind of things, which are predictors for heart disease. So a lot of the time, nutritional deficiency is at the root of things, much more commonly than you think. And I've got case studies for that on my channel, where one example, for instance, someone who came on and again was willing to not be anonymous and share publicly, 40-year health condition they'd spent six figures on, fixed by taking one amino acid that cost $10. And we found that through looking at their genetics. So no one ever would have guessed that. No practitioner ever would have suggested that because it was quite an obscure thing. Like, it is possible anyway. Next, toxins. You probably heard of this as well. I think the idea of generally detoxing and fasting and all that, I'm a fan of, but not hugely. But I'm much more of a fan of identifying if there are specific toxins that there's actual evidence are accumulating in your body and actually addressing that. Heavy metals is a common one. Mycotoxins is another one. There's some things which are toxins to some people and not others, like, for instance, oxalates. So finding out if you have a tendency for that, maybe with genetics, and then testing for it to confirm and actually treating it, like looking at the blood test results and saying, oh, I did this detox thing. Did it actually work? Yes, the number went down. Do you feel better as the number goes down? Yes. That's the kind of detox I'm into rather than more vague ones. Hormonal imbalances and neurochemical imbalances. I gave the example of the different hormonal imbalances that lead to weight gain, but they can lead to all kinds of problems. That's number 4 on the list. Number 5 on the list is lifestyle factors, sleep, stress, and life environment, as well as exercise and movement, things that I specifically focus on. Number 6 is chronic infections. A lot of the time people have underlying chronic infections, whether it's a gum infection, whether it's a foot fungus, whether it's herpes, all of these kind of things. And these can really dysregulate the immune system over time. And a dysregulated immune system is much more likely to lead to cancer. It's much more likely to lead to all kinds of serious issues. There's the well-established connection, for instance, between gum disease and heart attacks, which you can look into. That's understood and admitted by the mainstream. And then lastly, emotional challenges. Sometimes the reason that people are ill is because they have trauma in their past that they haven't been able to let go of. And there's a genetic component for that, by the way. Obviously, genetics can't tell you if you will be traumatized, but there is a genetic thing that means some people, they find it much more difficult to get over trauma than other people. And so if you're one of those people like, the past is the past, no big deal, that's good for you. But there's someone else who may not feel that way. And there's a genetic reason for that, maybe, right? Like it's very hard for them to let it go, and it haunts them and it prevents them sleeping and it puts them into a stress state, which then dysregulates the immune system, and et cetera, et cetera. So looking at those 7 factors, I've never found anyone who, if we investigate all 7 of those factors, we don't find the solution to whatever their chronic health condition is. It's always something. And I know that they're quite broad, but purposefully, because there are a lot of different things that could be the root of it. But what I'm saying is, if you've really tried loads of stuff, if you've really spent loads of money, spent loads of time and got nowhere, which almost everyone who sees me, to be honest, that's what they tell me. And then I find it, like the example I gave a couple of examples today, that's because we're looking through all 7 of these categories. And what I find is most practitioners, they're only focused on some of them. Very few practitioners are aware of all 7 of those root causes. And you can educate them about it yourself, or you can go to different practitioners, each of whom are specialists in different root causes. But if you're not finding the answer, it's almost certainly because you haven't looked at all at least one of the potential root causes. That's my experience.
That was amazing. That's what we were looking for. Elwin, thank you for your time. I think that, again, this is a little bit different content, but I think it's so important because as you're scaling a business, as you're scaling your profession, the health is a huge component, right? You have to have the energy. You have to have the clarity to be able to grow and scale. And anyone who listens to this, if there's a nugget of anything, dive into his podcast, check out all the links and websites, go get the genetic test, or reach out to connect with Elwin directly. Elwin, thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom with us.